Have you ever felt like life is throwing nothing but obstacles your way? Like every step forward leads to yet another setback. Marshall Mathers, known to the world as Eminem, has been through it all: poverty, rejection, failure, and self-doubt. Yet it's these very experiences that shaped him into one of the greatest artists of all time. How did someone who started from nothing rise to the very top? In this episode, you'll discover 5 powerful lessons from Eminem's life. Lessons that can help anyone turn failure into success, pain into strength, and dreams into reality. Don't forget to leave a supportive comment, write change, and maybe thanks to you, someone will start a new life today. Let's begin. Lesson 1. No chance? Try again. We all know that moment when dreams feel out of reach and life keeps throwing challenges our way. Maybe you tried something new, invested your time, money, and heart, only for the world to respond with silence, or worse, criticism. In these moments, it's easy to start doubting yourself. Maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But is failure truly the end? Eminem, one of the greatest artists in hip-hop history, proves that the answer is no. Marshall Mathers, known as Eminem, walked a path most would consider impossible. His life is not just a story of success, but a relentless battle against poverty, criticism, and self-doubt. It's a tale of willpower that can inspire anyone. Picture Detroit in the 1980s and 1990s, a city that was once a symbol of industrial power now drowning in crisis. Unemployment, crime, and poverty were daily realities, and Marshall grew up in some of its toughest neighborhoods. His mother, single and battling her own issues, couldn't provide a stable home. Moving from one rundown area to another meant Marshall never felt like he belonged. At school, he was bullied, came home with bruises, and saw nothing but disregard in his peers' eyes. How do you find hope in such a world? For Marshall, the answer was music. Rap became his refuge, his way of survival. But even here, reality was harsh. In a scene dominated by black artists, a white boy from Detroit had to fight for every ounce of respect. At first, everyone thought I was a joke, Eminem recalled in an interview. But Marshall refused to be broken. Every freestyle battle, every performance at a local club was another step toward his goal. I wanted to prove that I could do it better than anyone else, he said. Have you ever felt you needed to work twice as hard just to be taken seriously? Eminem knew that feeling all too well. His first big attempt, his 1996 album Infinite, was more than just a musical project. It was his hope for a better life. Marshall was working as a cook in a restaurant, barely scraping by, putting every penny he had into his music. Yet when the album finally hit the market, the world responded with indifference. Critics dismissed it as unoriginal, and sales were so poor that Marshall could barely pay off his debts. I felt like I had failed not just myself, but my daughter, he later admitted. At the time, Marshall had a young daughter, Haley, whom he loved more than anything. I couldn't give up because I knew she was counting on me, he recalled. But how do you find the strength when everything seems to be falling apart? For Marshall, the answer was something we can all apply: a change in approach. The failure of Infinite forced him to reflect on what wasn't working. That's when Slim Shady was born, a dark, provocative alter ego that allowed him to express his emotions in a way he hadn't dared before. Slim Shady was angry, defiant, and unlike anything the hip-hop world had seen, it was Slim Shady who took Marshall to the 1997 Rap Olympics, a contest that would change his life. But the road to Los Angeles wasn't easy. Marshall was broke. He borrowed money for a ticket, packed one demo tape, and took a leap of faith. Imagine this moment, knowing it might be your last shot, but risking it all because you have nothing left to lose. At the Rap Olympics, Eminem made it to the finals. His freestyling and charisma impressed the crowd, but he ultimately lost. Was this another failure? Not this time. In the audience was Jimmy Iovine, who heard Marshall's demo and passed it to Dr. Dre. Days later, Marshall received a call that would change his life forever. Meeting Dr. Dre was like a dream come true. I couldn't believe I was in the studio with someone whose music I had admired my whole life, Eminem said. Within hours, they recorded My Name Is, a track that would catapult Marshall to the top of the charts. But success didn't come without a fight. As a white rapper, Marshall had to battle criticism and prejudice, both within the industry and among listeners. Yet his determination and talent were undeniable. Think about your own life. Do you have a goal that seems impossible to achieve? Maybe you've tried something new and faced obstacle after obstacle. Maybe someone told you that you're not good enough, that it's not meant for you. Eminem's story reminds us that success doesn't come easy. Failure, criticism, and even self-doubt are part of the journey. But like Eminem, each of us has the strength to try again. As he himself said, it's not about how many times you fall, it's about whether you get back up. Your fourth try might be just around the corner. Are you ready to take it? Lesson 2. Stop pretending, start being yourself. There comes a time in life when we realize that the only way forward is by embracing our true selves. For Eminem, that moment came after the failure of Infinite, his debut album that he thought would be his breakthrough. Instead, it became a harsh wake-up call, forcing him to confront a truth that many of us avoid. Trying to fit into someone else's mold will only hold us back. In 1996, Marshall Mathers was just a young rapper from Detroit with big dreams and even bigger responsibilities. He was a father to his baby daughter Haley and worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Every dollar he earned went into recording Infinite, an album he poured his heart into. This wasn't just a project. It was his chance to escape the cycle of poverty and chaos that defined his life. Infinite was supposed to prove I was good enough, that I had what it took, Eminem later said. He worked tirelessly on the album, crafting intricate rhymes and honing his delivery, determined to compete with rap legends like Nas and AZ. But when the album was released, the response was devastating. Critics dismissed it as unoriginal, comparing it unfavorably to more established artists. The album sold only a few hundred copies, most of which were bought by Marshall's friends and local supporters. I felt like I had failed, not just as an artist, but as a father, Eminem admitted. The failure of Infinite wasn't just a professional setback. It struck at the core of his identity. After years of struggling to find his voice, he realized that his greatest mistake had been trying to be someone he wasn't. I was trying to sound like everyone else, and it killed me inside. This realization became the turning point in his career. Out of the ashes of Infinite rose Slim Shady, a persona that allowed Marshall to channel his anger, pain, and frustration into something raw and unapologetic. Slim Shady was dark, irreverent, and completely authentic. Slim Shady wasn't just a character, Eminem explained. It was everything I was too scared to say before. Slim Shady gave Eminem the freedom to create music that was unfiltered and deeply personal. His lyrics became sharper, his delivery more aggressive, and his confidence undeniable. The honesty in his music began to resonate with people who, like him, felt overlooked and underestimated. This transformation was more than a stylistic change, it was a declaration of independence. Marshall was no longer trying to fit in, he was creating his own lane. Imagine being at a point in your life where you feel like everything you've done has been a failure. What would you do next? For Eminem, the answer was clear. He had to stop pretending and start being true to himself. That's a lesson we can all take to heart. How often do we try to conform to others' expectations, only to feel empty and unfulfilled? The failure of Infinite taught Eminem that success doesn't come from imitation, it comes from authenticity. With Slim Shady, Eminem began writing songs that reflected his true self, his struggles, his anger, and his humor. This new direction led him to Rap Olympics, where he caught the attention of Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, but more importantly, it redefined his relationship with music. I finally felt free, Eminem said. I wasn't worried about what anyone thought anymore. This freedom became the cornerstone of his success. Eminem's rise to fame wasn't just about his talent, it was about his willingness to embrace who he truly was. His music resonated because it was real, and that authenticity became his greatest strength. Think about your own life. Are there areas where you're holding back, trying to fit into a mold that doesn't reflect who you really are? What would happen if you let go of those expectations and allowed yourself to be fully authentic? Eminem's story reminds us that the path to success starts with being honest with ourselves. When we stop pretending and start being true to who we are, we unlock the potential to create something truly extraordinary. Lesson 3. Bet it all on one chance. We all face moments in life where everything seems to be falling apart. Failures pile up, support is nowhere to be found, and the voices in our heads whisper, maybe it's time to give up. In 1997, that was exactly where Marshall Mathers, known as Eminem, found himself. His debut album, Infinite, had flopped, leaving him with crushing debt and a bleak future. But then came the opportunity to participate in Rap Olympics, a prestigious freestyle competition in Los Angeles. For Eminem, this wasn't just another gig, it was his last shot. He bet everything on this one chance, and it changed his life forever. After the failure of Infinite, Eminem hit rock bottom. The album barely sold, and critics dismissed it as unoriginal. Marshall returned to Detroit, working menial jobs to support his young daughter, Haley. His days were a repetitive grind of serving food, struggling to pay bills, and wondering if his dream of becoming a rapper was a hopeless fantasy. That was the darkest time of my life, he later admitted. I felt like everything I touched turned to failure. But even in those moments, Marshall never gave up entirely. He kept writing, kept creating, clinging to the hope that his voice might still matter. When Marshall heard about Rap Olympics, a prestigious freestyle battle taking place in Los Angeles, he saw it as his one shot to prove himself. There was just one problem. He was broke. Working 2 jobs barely covered his bills, let alone a trip across the country. But Marshall refused to let that stop him. He borrowed money, sold what he could, and scraped together enough for a plane ticket. "I had nothing left to lose," he said. "If I didn't go, it would have been like giving up on everything I'd worked for. The stakes couldn't have been higher." Eminem arrived in Los Angeles with a single demo tape, a few dollars in his pocket, and a determination that burned brighter than ever. Rap Olympics was a pressure cooker of talent, the best freestyle rappers from across the country battling it out in front of an electric crowd. Marshall stood out immediately, not just because he was one of the few white participants, but because of his ferocity and skill. "I knew I had to leave it all on that stage," he recalled. Round after round, Eminem demolished his competitors, his sharp wit and relentless delivery captivating the audience. He made it all the way to the finals, where he faced one of the competition's toughest opponents. The battle was intense, every rhyme a strike, every comeback a counterpunch. In the end, Eminem didn't win, but what seemed like another loss on the surface was, in reality, the beginning of his breakthrough. In the audience that night was Jimmy Iovine, co-founder of Interscope Records. Impressed by Eminem's performance, Iovine took the rapper's demo tape and passed it to Dr. Dre, one of the most influential producers in hip-hop. "The moment I heard it, I knew this guy was special," Dre later said. Days after the competition, Eminem got a phone call that would change his life forever. Dr. Dre wanted to meet him. Meeting Dr. Dre was like a dream. Just days before, Eminem had been sleeping on a friend's couch, wondering how he'd survive another week. Now he was sitting in a studio with a man whose music he had idolized for years. "I couldn't believe it," Marshall recalled. "It felt like a movie." Together, they recorded My Name Is, the track that would launch Eminem's career. But none of it would have happened if Marshall hadn't bet everything on Rap Olympics. Eminem's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. You have to bet it all on that one chance, even if the odds aren't in your favor. Imagine standing in his shoes, broke, ridiculed, and with nothing but a dream. Would you have taken that risk? Would you have found the courage to try, knowing the stakes? Life often presents us with opportunities disguised as impossible challenges. It's easy to talk ourselves out of taking risks, to play it safe and avoid failure. But Eminem's journey reminds us that the greatest rewards come to those who are willing to go all in. He didn't win Rap Olympics, but he won something far more valuable: the chance to work with Dr. Dre and prove to the world what he was capable of. Think about your own life. Is there a challenge you've been avoiding because it feels too risky? Is there an opportunity waiting for you to take that leap of faith? Eminem's story is a testament to the fact that sometimes losing isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something greater. As he once said, "Success is my only option, failure's not." Your own breakthrough could be closer than you think, but you have to be willing to take the chance. Are you ready to bet it all? Lesson 4. Be ready for your big break. Every one of us dreams of that life-changing moment, the one opportunity that has the potential to redefine everything. For Marshall Mathers, better known as Eminem, that moment came when Dr. Dre called. But dreams alone aren't enough. When opportunity knocks, the question is, are you ready to answer? Eminem's story reminds us that preparation, talent, and determination must align when the moment arrives. It all started just days after Rap Olympics. Although Eminem didn't win the competition, his performance caught the attention of Jimmy Iovine, co-founder of Interscope Records. Iovine handed Eminem's demo tape to Dr. Dre, a hip-hop legend who had shaped the West Coast sound and worked with some of the industry's greatest talents. "The second I heard his voice, I knew he was something special," Dre later said. He wasted no time reaching out to Marshall. For Eminem, that phone call was surreal. Just days earlier, he had returned to Detroit broke and defeated, uncertain about his future. When he answered and heard Dr. Dre's voice, he thought it was a prank. "I couldn't believe it. Dre? Calling me? It felt like a joke," he recalled. But it was real. Dre wanted to meet him, and Eminem had no time to lose. The meeting took place at Dr. Dre's studio, a space Marshall had only dreamed of seeing. Walking into the studio was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I was shaking," Eminem admitted. "I knew that this was my one chance and I couldn't mess it up." Imagine stepping into a room with someone you've admired your whole life, knowing that everything you've worked for comes down to this moment. The pressure was immense, but Eminem knew he had to deliver. As soon as Eminem started rapping, Dre was hooked. The chemistry between the two was immediate. "He just started spitting and I was blown away," Dre said. Within hours, they recorded My Name Is, a track that would become Eminem's breakthrough single. The song showcased not just Eminem's technical skill, but also his sharp wit and unfiltered honesty. It was like nothing else in hip-hop at the time, and Dre knew they were onto something extraordinary. But this was just the beginning. Signing with Dr. Dre didn't automatically guarantee success. Eminem still faced significant challenges. As a white rapper entering a predominantly black genre, he had to prove himself to both the industry and the audience. Even Dre faced criticism for working with him. "I had people telling me, 'What are you doing? A white rapper? Are you crazy?'" Dre recalled. But Dre believed in Eminem, and Marshall was determined to show the world what he was capable of. For Eminem, this was more than just an opportunity, it was validation. "Dre was the first person who believed in me when no one else did," he said. That belief became a driving force, pushing him to work harder than ever. Every day in the studio was a test of his talent and determination. Marshall knew he couldn't afford to take this chance for granted. "I had to prove to Dre, to myself, and to everyone else that I deserved to be here," he said. When My Name Is hit the airwaves, the reaction was explosive. Listeners were captivated by Eminem's unapologetic style and razor-sharp lyrics. Critics who had dismissed him after Infinite now hailed him as one of the most exciting new voices in hip-hop. But this wasn't just about talent. It was about being ready when the moment came. Think about your own life. Have you ever had an opportunity that felt too big, too overwhelming? Were you ready to seize it? Eminem's story teaches us that success doesn't come from luck alone. It requires preparation, resilience, and the courage to rise to the occasion. Had Marshall not spent years perfecting his craft, enduring failure after failure, he wouldn't have been ready when Dre called. His talent was undeniable, but it was his readiness that made all the difference. Your own big break might be closer than you think, but are you prepared for it? Eminem's journey reminds us that every setback, every moment of doubt, is part of the preparation for something greater. When the opportunity comes, it's not just about having the skills, it's about having the mindset to make the most of it. As Eminem once said, "You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow." This opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Are you ready for your moment?
Lesson 5. Transform pain into power. Pain is a universal experience. It tests us, pushes us to our limits, and sometimes makes us question everything. For Marshall Mathers, pain wasn't a fleeting emotion. It was a constant companion. But instead of letting it define him, Eminem turned his pain into the fuel that propelled him to the top. His story is a testament to the transformative power of struggle and resilience. Marshall's childhood was marked by instability, poverty, and a lack of support. Raised by a single mother, Debbie Mathers, who battled her own issues, he lived a life of constant upheaval. They moved from one broken-down neighborhood to another, never staying in one place long enough to build a sense of home. School was no refuge either. Marshall was frequently bullied, beaten, and ostracized. "I never felt like I belonged anywhere," he once said. It's a feeling many of us can relate to, being on the outside, trying to find a place where we fit in. Music became his escape. At a time when everything in his life seemed to fall apart, writing lyrics gave him a sense of control. Rap was my therapy, Eminem said. Through his music, he found a way to express his anger, frustration, and longing for something better. But even this sanctuary came with its challenges. As a white rapper in a predominantly black genre, Marshall faced skepticism and outright rejection. No one wanted to take me seriously, he admitted. Imagine pursuing your passion only to be met with doubt at every turn. Would you keep going? Eminem's pain deepened after the release of his first album as Infinite. It was supposed to be his breakthrough, the record that would lift him out of poverty and validate his dreams. Instead, it flopped. Critics dismissed it as derivative, and it sold only a few hundred copies. Worse, Marshall felt the weight of failing not just himself, but his young daughter, Haley. I looked at her and thought, I can't let her down, he recalled. Yet, in the depths of this despair, Marshall found clarity. He realized that his greatest strength lay in his raw honesty and willingness to confront his pain head-on. This revelation led to the creation of Slim Shady, his now famous alter ego. Slim Shady wasn't just a character. He was the embodiment of everything Eminem had bottled up. His rage, his humor, his unfiltered truth. Through Slim Shady, Eminem turned his darkest moments into some of his most compelling art. It wasn't just music, he said. It was survival. Songs like Rock Bottom and Stan weren't just hits. They were glimpses into a life shaped by pain and perseverance. In them, listeners found an honesty that was both rare and deeply relatable. Eminem didn't just talk about his struggles. He owned them, using them to connect with millions of people who felt the same way. I realized my pain wasn't just mine, he explained. It was something a lot of people could relate to, and that gave it meaning. Eminem's struggles didn't end with success. At the height of his career, he battled addiction, nearly losing everything he had worked so hard for. In 2007, he overdosed on prescription pills, a near-fatal event that forced him to confront his demons. I had to decide if I wanted to live or die, he said. Choosing life meant facing his pain again, this time without numbing it. It was one of the hardest battles he had ever fought, but it also became one of his greatest victories. Think about your own life. Have you experienced pain so deep that it seemed impossible to overcome? Maybe it was a loss, a failure, or a moment when the world seemed to collapse around you. Eminem's story reminds us that pain doesn't have to break us. It can become the very thing that drives us to grow, to change, and to create something meaningful. Marshall Mathers didn't shy away from his pain. He faced it, wrote about it, and turned it into his greatest strength. His music became a way to process his struggles and, in doing so, helped others process theirs. It's a powerful reminder that even our darkest moments can serve a purpose. As he once said, "You can make something beautiful out of even the worst circumstances. You just have to keep going." So ask yourself, what pain are you carrying? And how can you transform it into something powerful? Eminem's journey shows us that the greatest strength often comes from the deepest wounds. The question is not whether we will face pain, but how we will use it. Are you ready to turn your pain into power?